Good evening. Welcome to tonight's August 2026 Citizens Advisory Board. I'm Jeffrey Kennedy, the chair. I'm going to start by taking roll down to my right.
I'm Lawrence Ludwig. Good evening.
Sarah Ertz.
Sean Ritchie.
John Lydon.
Ryan Hanley.
Nathaniel Scroggins.
Awesome. So we have a quorum. So I'm going to jump right into the agenda. First thing of business is the minutes from June. I know it's been a couple of months. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? Any issues that you saw? Nope. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Rolling right along. All right. We're going to jump right into director updates with the director.
Thanks for everyone giving up your evening. It was great to see some of you over the last month out of things. I saw Nat at National Night Out just 2 nights ago. The rain didn't slow us down at all. So I have, feel like a lot packed in this report, and I definitely want to credit Andre Smith from the Baynet, because this is a drone image, kind of shows you the progress on the St. Clements Island Museum. We held a couple different events. On July 6th, we presented to the trustees, you can advance to the next slide, some of the renderings of the interior exhibits, your counter group, the museum trustees. And then on July 29th at Potomac Gardens, right there closest to the museum, we held a public meeting also where people can come out and get questions answered. The themes of this museum is going to tell that first landing and the arrival. My favorite part, though, is it's also going to be told from the perspectives of the Native people that were here as well. So we're working with our Native tribe. They're helping to do everything from create a dugout canoe for us, help us draft the exhibits. And then you can see one more image. So that's a wayside rail, the one to the right there. So there'll be things that you can touch, artifacts that are up close. Just gives you a good sense of what the exhibits are going to look like. The company's been doing a fantastic job, and we have a big deadline for Maryland Day that we need to make sure that everything is ready to go coming for us in March. Monday was a big day for us. We've been talking about this project for a long time. We had the pre-bid meeting for the improvements coming to Snow Hill Park. This phase includes a new boat ramp, and a kayak launch, as well as parking improvements. And then while this phase is going, there'll also be a second phase that'll be road improvements on the way in, especially line of sight when you get out to where you have to make the left or right on Sandgates. There'll be clearing of back, and they'll be kind of partitioned off so you get much better sight lines. And we really appreciate our neighbors working with us on easements, and they've been so helpful for us out there. So plenty of bidders showed up. And then we had also talked about kayak rentals starting on a self-serve kiosk that is scheduled to be installed within the next 10 days. So stand-up paddle boards and kayaks are coming to Snow Hill. And then also that first phase includes games for pickleball paddles, for disc golf at Chancellor, disc golf at the Passive Park, and then at Chancellor's there's bocce and pickleball that people will be able to rent the equipment. This is probably my favorite update of the whole night. We've been talking about how great it would be if we could expand our scholarship program. The commissioners put $75,000 into our budget to expand, to let us partner with the community leagues and our partners that run things. So that went live in July, and as of August 4th, we've already had 134 individuals apply for scholarships. Of those, 122 expressed, so each child is on free or reduced lunch and applies for the program, we do a 50-50 matching scholarship up to $400. So they have to, the guardian or parent says, hey, this is the stuff we're interested in. The leagues have to fill out a process, be in good standing with the state. And 4 of our fall leagues have already done that. The St. Mary's Soccer, Pax River Raiders, Leonardtown Wildcats, and Mechanicsville Braves. So same thing will happen with winter and spring sports. That $400 renews. It kind of goes with the school year, so it's just started out. And Jessica and I have kind of a little fun game going back and forth on how much we're going to need, and we're off to a great start. Jessica Jessica feels we're going to spend every penny of those $75,000 in addition to the other events like our golf tournament that's coming up that are our big fundraisers that supports the program. So I have on here some screenshots kind of showing what parents see when they go onto the website. They upload that letter showing they're eligible for free or reduced lunch, and then kind of the approval process. We met with the Raiders yesterday. Pax Rivers Raiders said this is a great thing. It's really going to help them as an organization, and they were thrilled with how many of their families were taking advantage of the program. July has been nonstop. If I have some more gray hair, you guys will understand why. The 21st, we had the ribbon cutting on the building just to my left, the Early Learning Center. We're partnered with the YMCA. This facility, there is a priority given to county employees and also by what type of job you have. So first responders, emergency services have the highest priority, but the facility is open to the public as a whole. So that priority only applies when there's a waiting list and things like that. So if you know anyone looking for childcare, you can see the flyer information over there. They have infant rooms. It'll hold up to 100 youth, and they're anticipating opening later this month. So Summer Stock, this was the 44th production of Summer Stock. The history is a little tricky with Summer Stock because the tradition started in 1971. This year's production, we were back at Great Mills High School, which is just a fantastic venue for us. It was Frozen from Disney. I think this is like the perfect mix. You got kids dressed up, you got parents singing along. It was our largest crowd since 2019, which is fantastic. And I've only been a part of 2 Summer Stocks, but this year's show was really amazing. You lose track at some point that these were high schoolers up there, and it really a fantastic production. I hope you all got a chance to see it. And one of our shows, I think, essentially sold out, which wasn't a problem last year for us at all. So you can see some of the pictures from the Summer Stock production. And then my last slide for you all, Carver Rec Center is heading into, we've been talking about stuff happening at Carver for a long time. It's always busy with basketball and other programs that are in there. But the Boys and Girls Club is going to open this school year, so that's at the end of this month as well. They will have youth be able to be bused there in the afternoon, which is fantastic, from some local schools. And we're doing a dedication event that all of you will be invited to on the evening of September 15th. Hope you can make it. And then not far after that, and I should mention the Boys and Girls Club secured a $150,000 grant that's going to help outfit that building with a STEM lab, the furniture, and everything else they need for the club to survive. I've already met the club director. She's very excited, and this will be the 2nd club in the county. Then come November, the Maker Space will be opened in partnership with the Arts Council, and that'll be on the other wing of Carver. Things are going well with that project. One of the grants awarded that project was the largest arts grant given in the whole state. It took us a while for the Arts Council to get all the state funding kind of moving along and everything, but things are going great with that project. Open it up to any questions you guys might have for me. Don't worry, you will see me again. So I'm filling in for Christy on one.
The Boys and Girls Club, is that going to be like an open registration?
They're currently open for registration. They are advertising for kids. They have plenty of space, and it'll be strictly during the school year kind of program. And then our agreement, they partner with us so that we actually provide scholarship money for any youth that are eligible for our scholarship program that would like to attend our summer camps. And Boys and Girls Club will actually, for I think it's every 8 or 10 Boys and Girls Club youth, they're going to provide a staff member to help us run our camps, which is fantastic.
So how did they stagger the age grouping?
I don't know their exact age breakdown, but a lot of it's tied to the schools so I think Spring Ridge is one of the schools that they'll be transporting students over to, and then the parents can pick up at the end of the day whenever. So they're doing mentoring, they're doing snacks, they're getting exercise time, they'll be using our gym there. But I think it's going to start all the way from kindergarten up through middle school in that club.
Okay.
Did I get that right, Jessica?
Yes.
Yep.
some of the questions I have, you might not have answers for yet. I know at other facilities that have boat launches, the parking has always been an issue. Has that been taken into account for Snow Hill?
Yeah, so you can see, I don't know if Jessica has, she might not have that up anymore. We worked with DNR to try to determine the amount. There's a lot of environmental restrictions at Snow Hill. You're in the critical area. You got to get that out of there. We wanted to make sure there was plenty of accessible, but you can see the pull-through boat parking that's there. So the light gray that is on my left side of the screen, that is a gravel parking lot. And then there is kind of the existing parking you'll see there, which is right in front of the pavilion, that will be paved as well. So we'll be ending up with more parking than we currently have, but I think the park is going to see a lot more use now that once the word kind of gets out. Every time we promote Snow Hill on social media, people write, "Please stop talking about my favorite park. We don't need any more people coming to it." But it's...
Yeah, we recently had family come in from out of town for a reunion, and they spent a day down there and they loved it. So
That's fantastic.
Great facility. A hot topic that's always that in the circles, work or wherever people I talk to, is the learning center. What are and again, this is the part you might not have the information yet for. What's the utilization so far and the capacity of that? And also, what are the number of county employees that are taking advantage of the center?
Yeah, so the capacity is not fully set. That'll be in the final permit.
Okay.
And they're in the process. Our building services through our Public Works Department is providing the last, the fire marshal has approved. They need the final occupancy permit. And then in their licensing, we anticipate it being about 90 to 100 in that realm. I don't think any of us have really an idea. It's going to ebb and flow with county employees.
Yeah,
we expect the highest need being kind of in the infant kind of space and with the younger kids. But the YMCA tells us they have their lead teachers for every area already hired, which is fantastic in that one. They have their center director who's been working for a couple months now, and we've outfitted it so it's kind of ready to go. But 5 years from now, it might be a 50-50. But the priority list, it also... it's open, if there's people at the hospital that are interested, there's a lot of large employers in the area. I've heard a lot of really positive things about, from a county employee perspective, if you have a young one there, you can actually on your lunch break go over and nurse. Some really good advantages like that.
Yeah, I figured with it opening so recently.
Yes.
But okay.
Okay, perfect. Moving along the agenda is the sports complex study.
Yes, so I'm going to pinch hit for Christy. She's really seen this project through the whole way through. Something I wanted to, and you guys I know get a lot of questions, so I want to give you kind of the full story of how this project has developed. In October of 2020 is when the county first partnered with the Maryland Stadium Authority, and they did a preliminary study to look at all of these kind of facilities around the country. It's built on the tourism market. You have to get that critical mass of whatever sports you're doing, and you have to have enough people willing to drive. They looked at all the different sports. They did detailed analysis, but they also looked at what sports complexes were already built and what was coming in the known future. Of course, 2020, some pretty big things were going on in the world, and the world was shut down and reopening and all that kind of stuff on the process of that. So one of the things they determined, and part of that first study, was they saw what was local need and then what was the regional need to really drive. So that's what led into this second report. So under the local need, there was things like, I hear a lot of people say, well, how come there's an ice hockey ring in there? Well, one, if you're going to go into that sport, whatever that sport is, you're looking for that critical mass to attract tournaments. So one ring is not capable of holding a tournament. So whether it was a pool or ice hockey or other special, I've had someone this week talk to me about indoor tennis and things like that. Ice hockey was definitely a local need that was identified, but it did not rank well regionally when it came to how you had to drive, things like that. The sports that did really well in that were the court sports. on the inside, which we know on our own level, basketball was a need at the county level and at the regional kind of draw level. Outdoor-wise, baseball, softball, and then sports like field hockey, soccer, the turf type of thing. So again, you need a facility, and this particular facility that we did the preliminary design for, it was not designed with who's going to run it. It was designed that it has to be able to be at least break even. You have to have enough people coming, and these kind of models are paid for different ways across the country. I know coming from Delaware, my kids benefited greatly from the Frederica Sports Complex, which you've seen hotels pop up around, and they're going to their first indoor space, but there's a heads and beds tax that helps pay for that. So when people saw the large cost of $300 million, I don't think there's any intention that the county would write a check or anything like that for that amount. It is a large amount. And it's also in phases and could be done in parts. And we'll kind of roll through the next slide. You can see the indoor space. I hit this kind of already, the 2020, the analysis, how much space, what recommendations that were there, the economic impact that it could generate, all that was in that preliminary report. So phase 2 study really starts to take a dive in. So the property off of St. Andrews Church Road is 245 acres. It's already under county ownership. That was the property that was put forward before I got here as well, looking at, hey, the county already owns this. You don't have any extra payment to purchase land and those type of things. A phase 1 environmental review got done as part of this study, as well as an archaeology analysis, geotechnical, and unfortunately, some of the findings were not very favorable for that property. Can you go to the next slide? So I think you're all familiar with the location, so I won't spend a lot of time. But the great thing about this is this location is also pretty centralized. One thing that is surprising to a lot of folks, our hotels actually have the most vacancies on the weekends. That's not the norm in most places. Most communities, it's the other way around. So a sports complex would do well. So the important thing I want to show here is Johnson Pond is actually no longer a pond. That dam had been breached in the past. There's a lot of intermittent wetlands. You can see the entire property's forested. It butts up in the back boundary there to St. Mary's Lake, the state park property that's there. And you can see kind of the entrance. And this is shown as one big parcel, but if you ever look at the county tax maps, it's like 4 or 5 different parcels all owned by the county. So 3 phases. Phase 3 is the far one to the right and is by far the most expensive. As you come into the property, you can see the different fields there. There was a mix of artificial and natural surfaces for the baseball, softball, as well as the different square field sports that are there. Parking. Part of the challenges that came with this site is there's roughly about $60 million worth of, I'll call them site improvements. This is stormwater ponds. This is retaining walls. This is a $20 million bridge to get to phase 3. And before you ever touch a recreational amenity, your expenses go quite high. I will say, I think even if something's never built on this particular site, I think this really does show what a complex would need to be successful. You know, if you're bringing in a large tournament and it's a soccer tournament, you need to have that massive fields. Some of these fields are also convertible, where you could play multiple sports on them, like a baseball field could be converted into soccer and vice versa, which has been seen as a best practices in some areas. And then as you move to the back, you see the bridge that I mentioned earlier, and then the indoor space, which our greatest local need is indoor space. And the benefit of having something like this, let's say something like this gets built and it's run by a private vendor or it's run by the county, all week long, that space is available for practices. Our teams are able to compete. And that's what my daughter saw with her field hockey. She just finished her collegiate career, and I don't think she ever would have wanted to play field hockey if we didn't live 5 miles from a facility that offered this kind of resources in there. So some of my favorite parts of the design, The baseball field, so if you look at the building, it's essentially well-designed so that you have stadium seating to watch sports in both sides. So the one side, the baseball field, is kind of modeled after Williamsport. It's got, it just so happened that there was some elevation over there, so having a hill that some kids could roll down and things like that out in the outfield, it was certainly possible. And then the same thing on the box sports kind of thing. And then on the inside, it's convertible into, I think it was 32 volleyball courts, 16 basketball courts. Any of you, if you've ever, have any of you ever went to like Spooky Nook for a tournament or some of the different places? Flexibility is your friend because, you know, you want to have as many different tournaments as possible. It also had some options potentially for an indoor track and a recovery kind of area. But if you're hosting that many teams, you also need locker room space for those many teams. So I give kudos to the architects that worked on this plan. They had done similar facilities like this across the country. They really thought things out well. And again, it can be in 3 distinct phases. So maybe in the end, we only end with something in the first third of the property. I'm not sure where the future kind of takes us on that next one.
But by the first third, you mean the area to my left?
Yes, and it's better. I should have waited till we got to
Okay,
this one.
yeah, I see it now.
But you can really see all of the kind of wetlands on the property and the blue kind of, and then all the pool water blue is all stormwater as well. So that's stuff that's going to have to be created if this ever did get built out to this full scope and those type of things. So phase 1 was the cheapest. Phase 2 was then the second in the middle, and then anytime you're building indoor space, but then you can't get to phase 3 unless you have that bridge to kind of cross the waterway and the former pond that's there. So I've kind of hit this as we went through it instead of Christy had this slide here. You know, the site's currently 85% covered in forest. You know, you have to mitigate for that. That's anytime you do any kind of project like that. 35% of the site is encumbered with wetland streams, flood zones, and associated buffers. When I first arrived on this project with my environmental background, that is not a good mix for this type of complex and site and things like that. Not to mention, I think we're all familiar with the traffic areas of that road, and then the 1,600 parking spots seems like a ton, but it's still probably not enough to service everything there if it's full blown and peak going like you would want a facility like this to have. So next steps, there's some options up here. I don't think anyone really quite knows. So the commissioners got this presentation earlier last month. They saw the big sticker kind of shock. I don't think it was well kind of versed on all the different models. And then also this design is somewhat portable. I think we've identified, what the indoor space that could be used in the fields. The tough thing is we don't have the ability. We can't say, well, we'll just add on to Chancellor's and we'll create the baseball version of this at Chancellor's. Chancellor's not even owned by us. A lot of people don't realize that. Chancellor's owned by DNR, but there's not a whole lot of room to add to Chancellor's. Lancaster is, we're in the AQs. And you want to kind of limit large gatherings of folks and things like that. So I don't have the best what's coming in the future, but I do know that, it identified needs, and I think it did a really good job of showing what people are willing to travel for. And that's the big message I want to get out there. I know people feel like, well, my sport was left out of this. They asked that to the group presenting it, and I don't think they did a good job of sharing. Like, this was built off of that first plan on what people are willing to travel for, and then also what could generate money to support a complex or pay bonds or something like that. And the Stadium Authority does provide bonds. Over time, the state has provided, they helped totally rehab a minor league stadium in Hagerstown through the Stadium Authority. But there's not a blank check with the state of Maryland certainly sitting there to write for a new complex like this. So that is you guys, all the information's online. It's a I know Jeff was talking to me about the rare bats that potentially could be at the site. I know the site I think there's actually, they recommend another archaeological study if anything moves forward. So if there was a next step, I think that's the definite next step, because you don't want to do any more planning until you know what you have underneath the ground and the native species and things like that. But it's all online, you know, we're constantly we're talking in public-private partnerships with folks about fields in different locations. We were welcomed out to a property yesterday that someone might be able to rent to us at a very cheap place. So we're continuing. There's no doubt we need more field space just for our own county kind of needs, especially in the practice realm. So I've said enough, so I'll kind of stop there and open it up for your questions.
Questions?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go for it, John.
I guess the short answer, or short question is this going anywhere? Or, I mean, phase one, is anybody even seriously considering this?
There is no further money right now, so you guys would hear as it kind of moves through the process if anything does go further. It's not like the Stadium Authority, sometimes with grants, and they did put money towards this, you know, hey, you did the first phase, we're going to bring you 50%. There is none of this. Their job is to help develop a vision and what's possible, and then to help bonds. They would help sell bonds to help pay for it.
This summer, we didn't do it. Last summer, my grandson was on a travel lacrosse team from here. They went to Hershey Park. They went to Williamsburg. These are two different full weekends. And then there was a third one here in Maryland. And the facilities that they had that they were looking at, like phase one, would have been something that they were doing there. I mean, they had, you know, the one at Hershey Park, we had 8 fields going at one time. Same thing in Williamsburg. They had fields, and this was just in one location. They had fields going in 3 different locations for a lacrosse tournament.
Yeah, and those communities, they really have an advantage because they've been in the tourism game for so long. They realize this really supplements their shoulder seasons, and they have the ability to apply all sorts of, you know, restaurant surcharges. And if you've ever went to New York City and you look at your bill for something, or, you know, New Jersey, and none of that kind of currently exists here. So I think if this does move anywhere, the funding strategy is just as important as the location. I don't think you'll ever be able to build out what's shown there on that site from an environmental standpoint.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I'll make one comment that I noticed is that they're calling for septic systems to be used. And I would, from my knowledge, I know that, I think that's probably a big mistake. I would think if this was going to work, it's really contingent upon either bringing Metcom to the site or having a package plant that they can run. So, you know, from that standpoint, I think it might be a problem.
Well, and you reminded me of one other thing that I'm really glad. One of the commissioners asked about why there was a small campground in it, and it's not really a public campground. The thought was that if you're a tournament promoter, or if you're a referee, or if you're a vendor selling T-shirts or equipment, you would be able to have a place and not have to leave the site. And when that question got asked, the answer was given that, well, it's for people that can't afford hotels. Not at all. That camp, people would be bringing in $100,000 RVs, and it would be more about less traffic kind of going in and out. And I think that was a good solution for something like this, especially those kind of tournament coordinators that they might be in Williamsburg this week, and then 2 weeks later, they're going to set up shop for a week and be in St. Mary's County. That's how the nature of that business really works. And a lot of you I know have traveled for sports, and I don't think youth sports tourism is going to slow down at all. It only seems to be gaining steam. This is a major commitment, and that's you know, when you talk about this amount of money and you think about how many schools, or you know, that's the challenge on these kind of projects.
And Ray, another point was that I see there's 3 phases. Are they? And my question would be, would they be constructed back to back, or are they going to be spread out over a long period of time?
Well, if all the environmental stuff and everything moved forward and the Ludlow Family Foundation brought the full amount, they could be constructed all at one time, and it would be a cost savings. The Stadium Authority did not put that in there, but they made some assumptions of starting construction, I think, in like 3 years, and this is what they think the cost is going to be in 3 years. But as you know, with your background, if you don't start anything for 10 years, we're probably talking another 20 or 30% higher kind of costs and things like that. But they certainly, most of these projects are done in phases just because of the cost to get something up and off the ground.
Thank you.
So we just estimated $300 million. Okay? We're not saying that we need $300 million to get started.
You would need some, whether it's bonds or some combination, you would need to have that money. You could start with a much smaller, I want to say it was in the $40 or $50 million for phase one. So you could start that and have that construction moving. And it's also nice because phase three, no one's even going back to that portion of the property. So it's not like you have to, if you ever did build all three phases, you're not shutting down tournaments or anything like that. It's a natural kind of progression as you kind of go.
Okay.
We'll be passing a collection plate around. This, as a parks director, this is really tough because this would be an amazing type of facility for kids to have in our county. We don't have anything, you could put our whole system together and it doesn't really come to that level of investment. Usually we're, Margaret Brent, our rec center, we're rehabbing at what's the old school and things like that. I have seen my daughter benefit from one of these kind of facilities. So it's tough to, I certainly don't have all the answers. So I get to be the one to give you the update. And I feel I would do a better job than Christy because she has even less of the answers. But that's the one thing I want to say. She's done a great job managing this project. I think some of you saw the meeting that we had about a year and a half ago. This room was packed. And there wasn't people saying they opposed the project. It was what kind of sports they wanted to see. And online, I've seen mixed reviews and I've had mixed comments come to me. $300 million is a lot of money.
Is there a conversation that might, while we figure out, while the county figures out whether this is something that's going to go here, break it up, do a phase only to whatever. I just think about it's usually real estate, right? Like that's the biggest denominator here is land. And I know the commissioners aren't in the business of owning land. So there's those conversations we've had with public schools. Is there and I don't know how that works specifically, but the schools I'm sure could benefit from upkeep of fields. I don't know what the space looks like on across the county on all the fields. There's some that, are used because the schools don't really care about it. So maybe the local leagues upkeep it, no matter the sport. So I didn't know if while we're figuring this out, is that something that is like on the table to work with Ryan and the team of, hey, I love it. We just need funding. We got to spread it across the county, make sure all the fields get some love.
Yeah, so we got some money in this past budget. This is, I guess, the dream. And you never know if a dream's going to happen, but we have to be in reality and moving forward. So we're doing a field analysis. The folks working on our master plan are going to help bring and talk to some of our key user groups. And they're going to look at kind of where the needs are, where we might be able to add some additional fields. We've already kind of fed some information to them, but they just finished doing all the measurements and what we have, and we're sharing the data. And then we did some of those meetings as part of the master plan with some of those league leaders. So they've already started to get a taste of it. And it's nice that our consultant's going to be able to carry that on. And they're going to look specifically like, all right, you're at a deficit, like you need 2 90-foot diamonds, or you need this in this location. So that's what they're going to be looking at, sports specific, location, and then the condition of what we have. So, and then we've also been on the smaller scale for the first time, and I don't know how long, we've actually invested. I think at last meeting I talked to you about some of the improvements at school fields that we use that are key to us for practice, and that partnership is very important to us. So,
Okay, awesome.
I think this is at such a preliminary stage. I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes, but I will say the entrance on St. Andrews Church Road, there's going to be so much traffic going into this facility on weekends that I've seen developers get denied building permits for smaller. So, and I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole. I don't think the St. Andrews Church Road will be able to handle it. Even, I saw on here, the plan was to put a circle. I like the circle idea, but I still don't think, it's just going to be a nightmare, especially with First Colony down there and everybody coming out of Leonardtown. That's one thing. We definitely need the baseball fields. I'm all for that. I think a lot of the people who are championing this from the baseball community aren't going to be here to use it, meaning their kids are going to be long gone. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm
just the
just being
truth, yeah.
realistic, right?
I got a 5-year-old, Sean. I'll be here.
Again,
joking.
well, no, I know you're joking, but I'm just saying-
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe.
Maybe.
The facility looks amazing. I still have, and I've talked to many in the community on both sides. Like I agree with you. There are many that are in favor of having a facility like this. It's an amazing looking facility, even if we have phase one, right? Like that's much better than we have now. I just don't know if I don't feel we would build it up to the point where we would have mass tournaments down here. I'm hesitant of that because you go somewhere like in Northern Virginia, there's so much more else to do. You go to a Hershey Park, Hershey Park, do I need to say more, right? I've lived here all my life. I think it's an amazing place to live. Some of my peers have moved out of here because they didn't think so. I think they're wrong, but we won't get into that. But again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because of it's so preliminary. But I don't know. I'm just a little skeptical that it would get the utilization we think.
Totally understand that.
But not that it's not needed. I'm all for
Yeah,
baseball
no,
and even the soccer fields. I know, people say, "Oh, we don't have too many of those," but are these fields? My last question: are these fields going to be turfed or artificial or
It was a
grass?
50-50 split, essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
One last
The only
comment,
thing-
that traffic study that you were talking about, the report did recommend that they do a more intense traffic study if this goes further. And I think considering that's always a problem for a lot of people who come to the meetings on these things, that would be something quite necessary, very necessary to
Absolutely,
do.
yep.
Okay. Do you want to just jump right into the LPPRP?
I get to jump out.
Jump out. Oh,
Jessica
yes,
is,
Jessica. All right.
here.
Okay.
Don't steal her thunder.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to provide you guys a couple of updates this evening, and we're going to start with the master plan and go through and talk about where we're at with the project, what's been going on, and what's coming up. So the Land Preservation Park and Recreation Plan, we've talked about this before. It is a plan that all counties in the state of Maryland have, and it qualifies you for funding and projects that move forward within what we have planned within the department. But our department also utilizes this as our master plan. So it really encompasses all of the different components when we're looking 5 years out. So this is our 5-year plan. We kicked this off this spring, and we've had our community engagement, which is now starting to come to a close. So far, we've hosted 5 community engagement sessions. We did that over the course of several days in June. In total, we met with 30 different community stakeholder organizations, and we did direct outreach. So the consultant had presence at First Friday in Leonardtown during that time. Also had a presence at the farmers markets up at the barns, and was available at our waterfront parks. During this time period, there were comment cards that were made available. They gave away a Yeti cooler, trying to get people to give some of their opinions to a chance to win that. The winner, by the way, she was very thrilled to win. And we continued collection of those comment cards simultaneously while the online platform was available. So there was a social website providing the feedback. And then the other key component is we are making sure that we have a statistically valid survey, and that has been randomly mailed out to houses. Has anybody received it? No. Dang it, neither have I. But that has been mailed out, and about 2 weeks ago, the report was about halfway there. What they want to see is at least 400 responses. There is an option that people can go online and fill it out versus mailing it in, but those two options exist. There's a certain code you have to do to access it. And then once we get to 400, it will be statistically valid. So that's where we're at with that. The Social Point is that website that I'm referencing. It launched in April. We had over 3,500 unique views and visits to the site. I will say that we are far ahead of our other neighboring counties, so we're doing a pretty good job. The consultant was pretty happy with the results of the interaction. Citizens were able to interact on a map. They could drop a pin, make a comment about what they would like to see in that particular area of the county. We had an ideas wall. About 128 people posted some ideas. There was a budget tool where you could prioritize where you felt money should be assessed as far as projects are concerned, or programs, facilities. And then there was a survey, a very short survey, not nearly as expansive as the mail-out survey, for 165 responses. Additionally, the consultant has pushed out the longer survey that's being mailed out. People can respond to that. It won't be part of the statistically valid pool of people, but if you've been scrolling through on social media, you've probably seen it. It's popping up constantly on mine. So that has really made a pretty strong reach for people to be able to give their input. And then here's a timeline of the whole project. So we've completed the discovery phase, which was the project kickoff. The consultants were actually on site and met with leadership, met with some of you on the board as well as our commissioners, some of our commissioners. And then that engagement phase, that's what we're coming to the end of, that where we're doing the survey, the public input, and the gathering of all of the feedback. Then the consultant's going to do the analysis and put together the first draft. That's what they're working on now. That first draft will come to us at the end of the month. Then our department will have an opportunity to review that, work with our consultant, any feedback, making sure that the components are where we think that they need to be. And we're going to really enter into that visioning phase where we really start to look at drafting those final recommendations. You, as a board, will receive a draft copy, and the consultant will be here and present to you in October. So that will be an opportunity to ask the consultant questions. You will receive a copy of that in advance of that meeting. It's a rather large document, so giving you guys some time to take a look at that. And then with this, the impact to the county is far beyond just even recreation and park programs. It's also agricultural. There's a lot of other components that are part of this plan. So that will go to the County Planning Commission. There will be a public hearing when we present to them at the end of October. And then finally, it will go to St. Mary's County Commissioners for their review and approval to forward and finalize that plan. And it will be due to the state at the end of December. The state takes about 4 or 5 months. Where they'll do their review, they'll provide us any comments, and then it will get adopted hopefully in July. And so that will chart our course for the next 5 years for our master planning and, of course, the LPPRP. Any questions before I move on to the strategic plan that kind of feeds right into the master plan? So we've been pretty excited about the community engagement. We really spent quite a bit of effort to make sure that citizens knew that their voices were so important. So we want to continue to always get feedback from our citizens. So we're excited to see the draft plan and bring that to you guys in October. Kind of simultaneously, it all kind of working together. I've talked to you guys about the strategic plan before. We successfully met all of our short-term goals as of December of 2025, and we are deep into our midterm goals. We had made a commitment to provide an update twice a year, and so just wanted to give you a quick update. I'm not going to go through every single item on here, but we were well underway with our midterm objectives and our action items. And we meet pretty regularly as a group to make sure that we're on target with that. So just a reminder, again, the pillars of success that we have set this plan to, customer service, fiscal stewardship, innovation for our organization, and then human capital, which is ensuring our stability. So you can see here highlighted are the action items for midterm goals for customer service. So we're implementing a comprehensive management plan, which is what we just discussed with the LPPRP, and then engaging in long-term strategic partnerships. So we've had pretty incredible, successful year with partnerships, as far as the YMCA is concerned, Boys and Girls Club, the Arts Council, and the Maker Space. And so really bringing unique offerings to the community through those strong partnerships. We're developing metric reporting, and we're making sure that we're always offering what is the most, reasonable, but also what the community wants to have. And if there's things that maybe just aren't as successful anymore, how we phase those out and how we make determinations of what new programs to bring on. Modifying and adjusting our service delivery for underrepresented groups. We've expanded our scholarship opportunities, also looking at ways to reach out into communities where it might be a little harder to reach and get access to programs and facilities. Hosting annual community awareness events. We just did a trail day. We had not done that before, so Marguerite and her team worked well on creating that unique event that hopefully will continue, and then participation in various other events. Fiscal stewardship, we've been doing a lot of work to achieve these midterm goals, analyzing opportunities to improve current amenities. You can see there the USTA assessment, the kiosk for the paddleboarding and kayak. USGA has done an assessment on the golf course. We're always analyzing trends and looking at our budget recommendations. We're getting ready already to start planning for FY28. So 3-year budget expenditures and cross controls, of course, with CIP, we're always looking at least 5 years out. And then looking to conduct a market analysis, making sure that we're competitive and reasonable as far as our fees and charges are concerned. Organization innovation, again, the LPPRP plays a big role in this. Green infrastructure and environmentally focused activities or initiatives, of course, recommending a comprehensive plan that includes golf course amenities, enhancing player experience, and then installation of security cameras. That is continuing as far as our parks and facilities, making sure that we have eyes on those spaces. And then finally, human capital, which is really an investment in our employees and volunteers, and making sure that we are developing succession plans. Again, we have experienced a little bit of it, and it's only going to continue. The great retirement kind of phase and wave that's going to be happening, losing that institutional knowledge, but making sure that we maintain that information moving forward. Analyzing current and future demands for programs, and then identifying any sort of gaps with staff training, really investing a lot in staff training and certifications, and making sure that we are the best professionals that we can be. So in total, 15 midterm objectives. These need to be realized by the end of 2027. So it's a little bit longer time frame, but as you can see, pretty big initiatives that we are undertaking. So we are on a good path to achieving those objectives. Any questions regarding the strategic plan progress? Okay.
Nope.
And then just an update about our technology. So we've been very fortunate the last 2 years where technology has kind of taken a front seat, and we've received a lot of commitment to supporting that in our department and being able to offer a new registration system. Civic Plus is going fabulously. Of course, with any new system, there's going to be issues, but about 7 months, 8 months in, we've really been able to identify ways for improving how we do a lot of different things. There's still a lot more for us to continue to implement and improve with the system, but we're having a lot of success with that. So very pleased with that. Always making improvements to that. Golf course has a new system now. Both sides of the house, so to speak, of the golf course talk to each other. Just an example, this morning we had a little bit of a glitch over in the pro shop. In regular times, we would have been out of luck, we were able to go ahead and use the computer system over in the restaurant side and take care of the golfers. So just an example of how a simple upgrade can really make a difference in our customer service delivery. So that is going very well. And then currently we are involved in training for this system called Power DMS, and it's basically our document management system, and that's going to coincide very nicely with, we are on the heels of CAPRA reaccreditation for our department, which is quite a bit of documents and organization and management and policies and procedures. And this system is really going to help streamline our processes. And it's also going to be a nice management tool for staff for reviewing, approving, and compliance. So Power DMS is underway, and we hope to launch that in September. So first, it's going to help us greatly with our accreditation, but then it's going to keep us on track moving forward with our policy review and staff training. So that's where we're at. Any questions with technology?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question. I've started to use AI in some of the things that I do. Are we starting to try it out for some of the things that we're doing here?
Well, I know that Mr. Bivens, Director Bivens, is very excited about some of the things with AI. I wouldn't say that we're intentionally looking at systems and implementing. I think that we're dipping our toe in some of the things. Sometimes with some of these platforms, AI, there is already an AI component to it.
Yeah.
So I think it encompasses, it's a pretty broad
Yeah.
world. So I think some of these systems certainly include that. But certainly I think we're going to see more of it coming.
Okay, I expect so. Thank you.
It kind of leads into a question, and I talked about this when we were mentioning Civic Plus back before you guys put it into full production. With the field reservations, I know on here, have you guys seen that go over? I haven't asked yet. It was on my agenda to ask the next couple of weeks as fall ball starts to kick off, but I know, that's always been the issue with the systems and the whatever, like Civic Plus this year in the fall, it's been the first time. Have you guys seen it going well?
I think it has gone very well in terms of it's a new system that the leagues are having to maneuver. I think on the back end, there was a learning curve for sure. It is a very high volume. What was the number? Was it 15,000? I believe that they processed for the fall, 15,000 individual field reservations that has to be processed. So there still is a manual component to it on the back end, but the end result of once that is put into place, it certainly is superior to what our previous system was. Unless you guys have heard any differently from the leagues, I think the leagues seem to be pretty pleased with it. I think there's little things like every time something gets approved, it generates an email. So there's things on the back end that we work with the company to say, hey, what kind of improvements can we make that's kind of cumbersome? You can imagine if you're putting in a request for 300 different field time slots over the course of a season, 300 emails can be a little bit much. So
Sure.
Those kind of things we're working through. But I think overall functionality of actually requesting your fields, I think is far superior.
Okay, and I think and I don't know enough with the Civic Plus, but one of the things that we had the conversation with, I know Mr. McDonough was, he had asked several times about field usage and what the rates are and yada yada, and that gets kind of taxing, whether it's a human counting heads at a park or whatever, versus something like that tool should have some sort of mechanism built into it to where you guys can just pull a quick scrub how many were reserved versus used versus canceled versus moved or whatever the case is. Yeah, I love it when I say something and you're like, ooh, yeah, let me come back.
And I would encourage, I think our monthly reports do a really good job, and we're tracking everything from how many people are at the splash pad, when you're at the fields, how many no-shows. Like there's a lot of detail in our monthly reports, and they're on the website for everyone to see.
Yep.
I've heard great feedback from the leagues. I think the other thing people don't really quite understand, like I'll use baseball as the example. We're making reservations, but we also have to interact with the school system and things like that. So it's not just, it's our system is one part of it, but it's connected, and that same philosophy, when we have users at WAC. But as far as a communication tool with our citizens, it's a world better. And I remember when you first looked at it, you didn't see it being very mobile friendly in the first, and they literally rolled out a mobile improvement, and we were one of the first ones to pilot it. So I've heard lots of great feedback from folks, and our staff are really starting to see all the tools, like Today, we lost power at Margaret Brent where we had kids at camp, and we had to move camp. A message can get pushed out to all the parents with what's happening. We rented a bus, we got the kids moved, you'll be picking your kids up from Leonard Hall, and that's so much better than getting on the phone and calling each parent and saying, we're canceling camp today, come pick your kid up as soon as you can, kind of thing. And I think that's the kind of stuff that just happens every day that we take for granted because we just do it, but the technology was holding our people back. And, our reminders going out to day camp the week ahead of time, like these are the things you need to bring. And that reminder just needs to be touched up next year so our staff is not sending an email out anymore. It's been a huge improvement. But the league leaders, I've heard great comments on how they felt it was easier to use than our old system.
Okay, good. Questions? Nope, you good?
Yep.
Okay. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'll start on here at my left. Any
don't
closing
have
comments?
anything.
No, sir. I got a question. I read the county paper pretty routinely, and I guess the recent one is the issues with the Y and when it's going to open. And then there seems to be some confusion about, I guess, a swimming club or swimming team and Great Mills swimming pool, and it's not there anymore. And so what's going on?
Yeah, so the YMCA did take over the Great Mills pool
Right.
with the plan of it only being an outdoor pool because of the indoor. So their building is running behind. I don't think they have an actual date for their opening. I think everything I've read in the papers isn't exactly what I've been hearing. I know that there's been talk back and forth about what can be supported and those type of things, and I'm hearing promising things. So I don't think it's fully resolved yet, but I think they're in talks. I can tell you from our perspective at WAC, we can't always meet all the demand that some of our users, whether it's baseball, soccer, or whatever, and I think that's what's being worked through in that situation. They do not have a date when the Y is going to open just yet. They're waiting on some of the site work to finish.
Right, and I guess they're trying to work the issues out with this swimming team or whatever it is. It's been there
Yeah,
forever.
I know it's so important. Like I think Wednesday night, the head of the YMCA for the Chesapeake actually came over and had a series of meetings on Wednesday, and I've been getting updates that people on both sides feel like they're making progress, which is really good news. And I think there was a fear that, just because the Y was not able to provide everything that a group wanted, which we've done that as well as WAC. Like, we have to keep lanes open at WAC for the regular members and things like that. But it's, and I will say the pool is better suited to be an outdoor pool at Great Mills. It is a tough facility to run with a bubble, and that is. The bubble, we've had it up for auction, looking for, if anyone is interested, the bubble is, it's a 2018 bubble, so.
See plenty of those bubbles used as indoor tennis facilities, but not giving you any ideas.
Well, and ours would actually need, ours is only a heat source, so that would, it's not going to, you need a whole nother unit to help cool it. And I did want to answer your question, Larry. AI is saving us a lot of money. I'll give you a recent example. We're looking at acquiring a property that has a vacant structure on it. So instead of, I don't want to say that I'm not spending money on engineers, but I was able to use AI to create a site map that removed that structure and showed the commissioners what parking could look like and how we could rearrange an area. And in my 5 years ago, I would have probably spent $2,500 to get that site plan done. And I still need a site plan at some point, but sometimes you create site plans for things you never even use. In this case, we'll at least make the decision like, yes, we're moving forward with a purchase and those type of things. And we're using it in a lot of different ways. So.
Anything, Sean?
Nothing today.
I just had a question about the concessions at Chancellor's. How have they been going so far?
So rain's been a problem lately. She's excited to go into the fall. She had their first full month. She sent in her report, and I think we were happier that it did better than we kind of thought. It'll get steam and kind of go. She's actually going to be expanding her hours. So our advice to her was don't overcommit. If you're advertised to be there, you need to be open. And if people are pleasantly surprised that you stayed open a couple hours later, things like that, that's always kind of a bonus. I've heard good things about the food, and I've also heard that people are happy with the pricing. It's not carnival type of pricing. And then we were just talking about, so as tournaments come to Chancellor's, one thing that will be a change now is we're not going to bring a food truck to set up right next to our concession that won that bid that's going to be offering the exact same things. But we can have a food truck coming in. She does not sell
Funnel cakes is one.
funnel cakes, exactly. Yeah, so that would be perfect. When she doesn't sell fresh squeezed lemonade, things like that. So it's not to be that there won't be food trucks, but we're gonna certainly we want people to use that facility and promote it. And then we're also we're adding some fencing that is going up around that overlook, so it will not be access all the time, because that was an area we were having some problems with folks gathering and not following rules and things like that. So in late evenings, that area will be closed off. It's been temporary closed for a while, but we're very close to getting that project done.
I know, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I know there was problems we had with kids getting up there, then they're climbing on the roof. And, common sense things that they shouldn't be doing, but
Yeah, people seem happy with how things are going at Chancellor's. I was just in a meeting with the sheriff's office yesterday. Their support has been amazing. It's really helpful, and they take their community policing stuff seriously, and seeing their engagement at the National Night Out and things like that. So every problem that's in society, we have in our parks, but we don't want that impacting a family coming out with a visitor or anything like that. So they've been great in helping to keep that high standard and make sure people feel safe and enjoy our parks.
Just a question about the concessions. Does she have set hours right now? I don't remember that we.
She does, and they're posted. I think there was a period where there was some closures, like we did a major cleaning of the facility.
Okay.
So there was a period that for probably like a week or so that it was shut down, but I think she should be up and running again.
Like I guess there was just some talk that someone tried to go and it was supposed to be open and it wasn't open, so I didn't know if she had set hours anywhere, so that's
Yeah.
good to. And you said she might be expanding her hours as well?
She asked, she's going to be open more than we required her contractually to
okay.
do.
Gotcha.
We just asked her not to put out like a blanket, like, hey, I'm going to be here, because that, and then
Yeah.
she does look like if the weather's bad, they won't open, especially if we've closed. Like if she looks and sees that baseball is canceled at Chancellor's and there's no other things going on or very small, she might not open those nights.
Yeah, that would be great to maybe put in that post too,
Yeah.
like concessions will be closed or something like that. Maybe she could like keep you updated and include that, because I know that's where I look on Facebook to see if things are open
The
or
other thing we
closed.
talked to her about that would be nice is I think she needs to do a good job of letting the people at the other fields know that that is there. So she talked about putting up some pop-up signs and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd
taking
be
them
great.
down, like, hey, don't forget food over here. And but I've heard great things about her barbecue. People
Great.
seem to like that, and definitely I know we had talked quite a bit in this meeting about kid-friendly kind of stuff, and she seems to be living up to that, which is great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Larry, you got anything?
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
The only thing I had, and not put you guys on the spot, but I was just curious if you recall. So I know summer's ramping down, and I know we talked about the academy camps. This was the second or third year you guys had partners with the schools. I know the numbers last month just from registration, or last time we met before summer really kicked off, you guys were excited. Like, did that go over well again? Like,
Sports camps, the academies were down last year from the year previous, but this year I think was our biggest year yet. So I don't know what if we marketed it better or what, but I've heard a lot of great feedback. We had to add some in certain areas like golf, which we were able to do.
and that's really where I was curious about if you got enough feedback, because I know the wait list last time you had mentioned, and I'm sure you're limited by instructor availability. Obviously, we only have so many courses in the county, but I know golf is constantly, especially in the summer, like kids are going to that sport. So, okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
And golf lessons are offered more than just the summer too. So there's Ops 36.
36, yep.
That Nick Isom, Golf PGA Pro, provides, and they pretty much fill up. But he's always trying to add more if he has that within his schedule. So if anybody's looking for golf lessons for their kid, that is offered several times throughout the year. So.
Okay.
Yeah, highly recommend him for, especially for kids that are beginning. Operation 36 is probably the best way to learn from the green backwards. Too many kids, or parents, I should say, give their kids a driver and say, hey, let's go hit. Worst thing you can do.
Okay. Awesome. Well, with that, if there's no more questions, can I get a motion to close?
Motion to close?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.